Homeless man asks Barron Trump, "Can you give me $1?" Trump's response is shocking. The sun was setting over Cleveland, Ohio, casting a golden hue on the bustling city streets. On the corner of Broad Street and 17th Avenue, Leonard sat slumped against the wall of a convenience store. His clothes, layered to fight off the biting winter wind, were worn and frayed. Beside him, a cardboard sign read, "Anything helps. God bless." At 42 years old, Leonard had been homeless for nearly a year. Life had not always been this way. Once employed at a manufacturing plant, he had lost his job when the plant shut down. From there, it was a downward spiral. Medical bills, eviction, and finally, the streets. Each day was a fight for survival, and every passerby who ignored him was another reminder of his isolation. On this particular day, Leonard's spirits were at their lowest. People hurried past him, their faces turned away. He adjusted his beanie and shivered, watching the endless stream of shoes pass by. Polished loafers, worn sneakers, and high heels clicking against the pavement. Then, a pair of pristine white sneakers stopped just a few feet away. They were immaculate, the kind only someone wealthy and privileged might wear. Leonard glanced up, his curiosity piqued. Standing before him was a tall teenager, his hands casually tucked into the pockets of a sleek jacket. The boy's face was strikingly familiar, though Leonard couldn't immediately place it. The teenager was scrolling through his phone, seemingly unaware of the attention he was drawing. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some people even discreetly raised their phones to snap pictures. Leonard hesitated. He usually waited for eye contact before asking for help, but something about the boy's calm demeanor compelled him to speak. Taking a deep breath, he called out, "Hey, young man, can you spare $1?" The boy froze mid-scroll. Slowly, he turned to face Leonard, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the noise of the city seemed to fade, and time stood still. Leonard braced himself for rejection. Instead, the boy stepped closer. "What do you need it for?" the boy asked, his tone calm but direct. Leonard was caught off guard. It wasn't the dismissive or judgmental tone he was used to hearing. It was genuine curiosity. He cleared his throat and replied, "A cup of coffee would be nice. Maybe a sandwich, if I'm lucky." The boy's gaze didn't waver. "What's your name?" "Leonard," he replied hesitantly. The boy nodded. "I'm Barron." There was no arrogance in his voice, just sincerity. Leonard's mind raced. Barron. The name clicked, and so did the face. This was Barron Trump, the son of the former president. Leonard's pulse quickened. What was someone like him doing here? Barron crouched down, meeting Leonard's eyes. "How long have you been out here?" Leonard hesitated. Sharing his story wasn't something he usually did. Most people didn't care about the reasons behind his situation, but something about Barron's demeanor encouraged him to speak. "Almost a year," Leonard admitted. "Lost my job when the plant shut down. Then my health took a turn. Couldn't keep up with rent. It's been downhill ever since." Barron listened intently. His focus was unwavering, and his expression was one of concern rather than pity. Leonard wasn't used to this. Most people avoided his gaze or hurried past. Here was someone who not only stopped but also cared enough to listen. "What about family?" Barron asked. Leonard's jaw tightened. He shook his head. "Don't have much of that anymore. My folks passed years ago. My brother, we haven't talked in ages." He chuckled bitterly. "Not much left to lose when you've already lost it all." Barron was silent for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket. Leonard's heart raced. He had only asked for $1, but Barron pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "Here," Barron said, extending the money toward him. "This should cover more than coffee." Leonard stared at the bill, stunned. His hands trembled as he took it. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "Why would you do that?" Barron shrugged lightly. "Because I can." The simplicity of his answer left Leonard speechless. But Barron wasn't finished. He leaned in closer and said, "Listen, this isn't just about the money. I want you to promise me something." "What's that?" Leonard asked, clutching the bill tightly. "If I help you today, you've got to help yourself tomorrow. Deal?" Leonard felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time in years, someone wasn't just handing him charity. They were challenging him to fight for a better future. He nodded. "Deal." Barron's expression softened. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a small notepad. Scribbling something quickly, he handed the torn piece of paper to Leonard. "Go to this address tomorrow morning. They'll help you out. Tell them Barron sent you." Leonard unfolded the note. It was the address of a local shelter and resource center. He had heard of it, but had always been too proud or too ashamed to go. "I'll make sure they're expecting you," Barron added. As the crowd around them grew, Leonard noticed people recording the interaction. He felt a pang of embarrassment, but Barron seemed unfazed. He stood up, brushed off his knees, and looked Leonard in the eye. "You've got more strength in you than you realize. Don't forget that." With those final words, Barron walked away, leaving Leonard clutching the money and the note. For the first time in years, Leonard felt something stir within him. Hope. The next morning, Leonard stood outside the address Barron had given him. The building was modest but inviting, with a sign that read, "Hope Outreach Resource Center." Taking a deep breath, Leonard stepped inside. The warmth of the room enveloped him, and a receptionist greeted him with a kind smile. "How can I help you?" she asked. Leonard hesitated, then slid the note across the counter. "Barron sent me." The receptionist's eyes lit up. "Ah, you must be Leonard. We've been expecting you." The next few hours were a whirlwind. Leonard met with a caseworker who outlined a plan to help him get back on his feet. They provided him with a bed in the shelter, arranged for medical care, and connected him with a job training program. For the first time in months, Leonard felt like his life was starting to come together. Meanwhile, the video of Barron's interaction with Leonard had gone viral. Millions of people watched as the young Trump heir crouched beside a homeless man, offering not just money, but hope. Social media exploded with hashtags like #KindnessChallenge and #PayItForward. Donations poured into the shelter, and volunteers flocked to help. Leonard had no idea his story was at the center of a national conversation. He was too busy focusing on the promise he had made to Barron. Each day he took small steps, attending counseling sessions, filling out job applications, and reconnecting with himself. Then, one evening, as Leonard sat in the shelter's common room, a man approached him hesitantly. "Leonard?" Leonard looked up. His breath caught. "Paul." It was his younger brother, whom he hadn't seen in over a decade. "I saw the video," Paul said, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't know things had gotten so bad. I should have reached out sooner." Leonard shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "It's not your fault, but I'm glad you're here now." The brothers embraced, the weight of lost years dissolving in that moment. For Leonard, it was a reminder that even the most broken relationships could be mended. Over the following weeks, Leonard's life continued to improve. He secured a part-time job, reconnected with his brother, and began to rebuild his confidence. He often thought of Barron's words, "Small actions can lead to something bigger." Meanwhile, Barron quietly ensured that the shelter received substantial donations, enough to expand its programs and help even more people like Leonard. He refused interviews and stayed out of the spotlight, letting the story speak for itself. The ripple effect of Barron's act of kindness was undeniable. Across the country, people were inspired to perform their own acts of generosity. And for Leonard, it was proof that even in the darkest moments, a single spark of compassion could light the way forward.